They thought they had solved a royal mystery when Richard III's bones were uncovered beneath a Leicester car park. But the DNA didn't just confirm a king, it revealed a hidden break in the royal bloodline. Somewhere, someone's father was not who he was supposed to be. If that secret happened in the wrong generation, every monarch since sits on a throne they might not rightfully claim. But who and when did history take a turn no one expected? In 2004, Philippa Langley stood in a city council car park in Leicester, England, and felt a chill run through her. She was a screenwriter, not an archaeologist, and for years she had battled chronic fatigue that left her exhausted after the smallest effort. Yet something about this cracked stretch of tarmac pulled her in. The medieval maps she pored over late at night always pointed to this spot, the lost Greyfriars Priory, the last resting place of Richard III. Most historians dismiss the idea as wishful thinking. The friary was long gone, the grave forgotten, the odds against finding a king beneath modern pavement almost impossible. Langley refused to let it go. She spent months tracing old property lines and debating with city officials who saw only parking revenue, not history. She pleaded with archaeologists at the University of Leicester, pitching her plan to dig. When a single parking bay was painted with a white R for reserved in 2005, she took it as a sign she was on the right track. The project became her obsession, each rejection only fueling her determination. She knocked on doors, wrote letters, and scraped together funding from the Richard III Society, small donors, and anyone who would listen. For 8 years, Langley fought skepticism and bureaucratic inertia. By 2011, she finally convinced the council and university to approve a small excavation, targeting just a sliver of ground where the choir of the lost church might be. The dig was set. After centuries of rumor and decades of failed petitions, the first shovel would soon break the tarmac. August 25th, 2012. The digi began before sunrise, with archaeologist Matthew Morris leading a small team from the University of Leicester. They cut through layers of tarmac and gravel, working over ground that had been undisturbed for centuries. The target was precise. The choir of the lost Greyfriars Church, a space once reserved for the most honored burials. By midday, just 6 hours into what was planned as a 2-week excavation, Morris spotted something pale in the trench wall. It was a human femur. The team paused, realizing the odds they had just beaten. They widened the trench and uncovered a full skeleton, laid out exactly where medieval maps suggested the choir had been. The bones told a story even before laboratory tests began. The spine curved in a dramatic S shape, severe scoliosis, unmistakable even to the untrained eye. This was no ordinary skeleton. The ribcage pressed in at one side, the shoulders uneven, the back arched. Shakespeare's Hunchback suddenly seemed less like legend and more like anatomy. The skull showed fresh lesions, sharp cuts and punctures, a glimpse of violence that would demand forensic answers. The skeleton belonged to a male, late 20s or early 30s, matching Richard III's age at death. Every detail fit the historical record, right down to the location in the choir, the burial without a coffin, and the hurried, awkward positioning of the body. For the dig team, the find was more than luck. It was a direct hit. Years of skepticism fell away in a single afternoon. The next steps would move from the trench to the laboratory as science prepared to answer the ultimate question: had they truly found England's lost king? In the University of Leicester's ancient DNA lab, the next stage began with a single tooth. Dr. Turi King led the team, working under strict cleanroom conditions to guard against contamination. The tooth was powdered, the DNA painstakingly extracted and sequenced, targeting the mitochondrial genome, a genetic line passed down unchanged from mother to child for generations. This maternal DNA offered a unique key. Historian John Ashdown Hill had already traced Richard III's sister Anne of York's descendants through an unbroken female line, leading to Joy Ibsen in Canada, and after her passing, to her son Michael, a furniture maker now living in London. The samples from Michael Ibsen and another living relative, Wendy Duldig, in Australia, were sequenced and compared to the DNA from the skeleton. The results were immediate and striking, a perfect match across the entire mitochondrial genome. The probability of this match occurring by chance was calculated at less than 600,000. Statistically, that is a 99.999% certainty. This level of precision was possible because the mitochondrial DNA sequence, haplogroup J1CE2C, was rare in the British population. The team ran multiple independent extractions, checked for characteristic patterns of ancient DNA damage, and verified their findings with outside laboratories. Every strand of evidence pointed to the same conclusion: the bones from the Leicester car park belonged to Richard III. For Michael Ibsen, the connection was more than academic. A family line that had stretched unbroken for over 5 centuries was now written in the code of his own cells. The discovery of Richard III's remains brought certainty until the geneticists turned to the Y chromosome. This thread of DNA, passed from father to son, should have matched exactly between Richard and living male line descendants of Edward III. Instead, the results split the story wide open. Richard's Y chromosome belonged to the haplogroup GP287, while 4 out of 5 modern descendants carried R1b-U152, a completely different branch. Only one explanation fit. Somewhere in the 19 generations separating Richard from these living men, a false paternity event had broken the chain. In scientific terms, a child was raised as a king's son, but the biological father was someone else. Kevin Schur, the genealogist leading the research, mapped out every link in the royal chain. The paper trail was flawless, stretching from Edward III through John of Gaunt, the Beauforts, and the Somersets. But the DNA refused to cooperate. The ODDS of this happening by chance, of a single Y chromosome line failing to survive 19 generations, hover around 16%, but the consequences for royal history are far from ordinary statistics. The question became more than a matter of genetics. If the break happened in the Plantagenet era, it could mean every monarch from Henry IV to the present day inherited a title, not a bloodline. Historians have long whispered about possible scandals. John of Gaunt, born while Edward III was away at war, surrounded by rumors of a Flemish butcher father. Richard of Konigsberg, Richard III's grandfather, left out of his father's will, suspected to be the son of John Holland. The science could not pinpoint where the break occurred, only that it was real, and that it forced a new reckoning with the story of England's king. Richard III's last moments at Bosworth are written in bone. Forensic pathologists catalogued 11 wounds on his skeleton, 9 of them to the skull. 2 deep cuts at the base of the skull sliced away bone and exposed the brain. Injuries instantly fatal. 1 blade entered from behind, another drove through the right eye socket into the cranial cavity. The angles and force suggest heavy weapons, likely a halberd or sword, delivered after Richard lost his helmet. No defensive wounds appear on his arms or hands, meaning his armor was still in place when the killing blows landed. A sharp cut to the rib and a wound near the knee show he was attacked from several directions. The pattern of trauma reveals a king surrounded, unhorsed, and overwhelmed in the chaos of battle. Science leaves no doubt. Death came swiftly, the violence concentrated on a head left unprotected. After death, Richard's body was stripped naked and slung across a horse, arms and legs dangling, exposed to the jeers of his enemies. The final insult came not on the battlefield, but in humiliation, a dagger thrust through the right buttock, piercing the pelvis, a wound impossible to inflict on a man in armor, delivered only after the fighting had ended. His hands were likely bound, His body paraded through Leicester and finally buried without a coffin in a grave barely long enough for his frame. For centuries, Richard's remains lay in that hurried, unmarked pit. In 2015, the story came full circle. Michael Ibsen, whose DNA had helped confirm the king's identity, crafted Richard's new coffin by hand from English oak. The wood came from the Prince of Wales's own estate. Where once there was indignity and violence, there was now respect, a king buried at last with honor, his legacy carried by the living. Genetic evidence now sits at the heart of royal history, challenging centuries of unquestioned succession. The crown's legitimacy, once guarded by parchment and power, is exposed by a single strand of DNA. In an age of ancestry kits, even thrones are only as solid as the secrets they keep.